Today we're going to speak about safety in the wine industry. This is not going to be an extensive course about all the risks that you can find in a vineyard in the cellar. I'll give you some tips and highlight some dangers that you might be exposed, especially during your period of internship. I know that some of you never work outdoors and never work in a winery, so that's why today we're going to see some main dangers that you might be exposed. So in vineyards, the risks are pretty much the same of other agriculture activities. You are exposed to the weather, you are also exposed to phytosanitary products, and the third, there are machines that passing and you work nearby machines, tractors, forklifts, etc. So during this period of the year, we are in summertime, solar radiation and thermal stress. When you work in the vineyard, normally you do it in the morning because in the afternoon it will be very, very hot. So you are exposed to the sun and also to the hot, okay? So the dangers of sun exposure are huge, and many of them, you know, like cancer, etc. But these are long-term problems that you have. In the short term, there are several dangers related to the sun exposure. So sun exposure will impact your immunity activity, and you get sick really easily. So during the harvest, it's going to be a period where you need to be in shape, and if you expose yourself to the sun and without a hat, you're going to probably get headaches, sore throat, etc. And in the vineyard, it's a hot place, and then you go to the cellar and it's a cool place. So hot, cool. That's not the best conditions for work. So that's why you should be protected in a vineyard and in a winery. Protect yourself in a vineyard against thermal effect of solar radiation. So what I advise you is use a sunscreen on all exposed parts of your body, okay? You should always considering a good time for work early in the morning from 11 to 2 o'clock here in Europe. You might have the sun really up on you, and the effects of radiation, they are great on that period. So avoid work during this period, and very important, you should use a hat. Here you go. So in vineyards in Europe, you don't gonna find very dangerous insects or animals. Rarely you find a snake. Well, there's a large diversity of insects and even animals. You can find little rabbits, etc. But in terms of harmful animals, you don't have a lot of things that might hurt you. But you have a small little creature, a tick, that is not in the vineyard itself, in the plant, but in the weeds around, okay? So there are some years with a lot of ticks. Well, that's the case of 2020. If you go for a walk in the fields, you probably get 1 or 2 ticks, and that's important to identify and take it off from your body. So ticks, they are responsible for Lyme disease. And how can you avoid a tick? Well, if you work with long sleeves and pants in the vineyard, you will gonna lower the risk of getting a tick, but it is not very comfortable in the summer to work with long sleeves and pants, etc. So many of us, we work just like I'm dressing now, okay, with shorts, t-shirts, etc. So what we should do once we get out of the vineyard, we finish our day work, is inspect ourselves to see if we have or not an insect on us. So they are little insects, they look like a spider, and they like to hide in places like ears, your pits, etc. Okay? So Lyme disease and ticks, very important. Okay? Well, if you go to other countries like Australia or Brazil, you might find either risks with poison spiders and snakes. Okay, so in that places you should be very attentive and look around where you are putting your feet and your hands. So safety shoes in the vineyard, I strongly recommend you. Why? Because when you walk in the vineyard, when you are doing your work removal, leaf removal, getting grapes for the maturation control, you might step on a sharp object, a piece of iron, etc. And also, very important is wear gloves, okay? So when you work with gloves, you will not cut yourself. If you don't, the risk of cut yourself is huge, mainly when you work with a scissor, okay? So when you put your hand in a grape, sometimes you don't see, and up you touch a finger, especially when you are in a hurry or when you are tired, okay? So gloves are very important. Even for simple works like leaf removal, it's much more comfortable to work with gloves than to work with bare hands. So work outdoors, it involves a physical activity, and with the sun exposure, you're going to get dehydrated very soon. So always take with you a bottle of water or some other isotonic drink and keep drinking it. When your body is hydrated, you work better, you think better, and you are fast in the moves. Tractor-related accidents still top cases of injuries. So operators must be absolutely trained for the job. One of the most important parts or devices in a tractor is what we call a rollover protection structure. In this model here, the rollover protection structure is fixed, so you cannot remove it easily. So the fact that we have this piece of iron there, it will protect the cockpit to be crushed in case of accident. And you should wear a seat belt, so very important. In small tractors, you might find some old models that they don't have this kind of structure, which is very dangerous to operate with a machine like this. Without a rollover protection structure, you should not use a tractor, okay? Victim of accidents, they don't even make it to the emergency room. So the chances of surviving of an accident tractor that doesn't have a rollover protection structure, they are really, really low.
Probably the driver would have been crushed to death in less than 1.4 seconds. That's not enough time to react, let alone jump. A different tractor in a different situation, but with the same result, a dead operator. See for yourself what protection the operator has with a ROPS and a seatbelt.
Power takeoff, or PTO. Ensure that the PTO shafts and connections are guarded and keep clear when it is engaged. Here in this picture, you can see the drawbar is well connected and the PTO is well guarded. So in this zone, this PTO zone, no passenger or operator should get in.
Okay folks, so now we're going to speak about forklifts. Accidents with forklifts are very common in vineyard, but also in the cellar. So many things can go wrong when machines and humans, they share the same place. That's true also in the vineyard, as I told you before. Tractors, people, very easy, we can have an accident. So people that are working in the tractor, they are driving a tractor or a forklift, many of the times they cannot see and hear the other workers, okay? So visibility, it's a problem. And also to hear the people. So, how to reduce the risk of accidents with forklifts? First, something that is very, very important is test your load capacity. You should raise your, lift the load some centimeters, like 5 centimeters. And if you see that you are stable, okay, you can continue. If you see that your rear wheels are not touching the ground, you have too much load. So when you move loads, don't raise or lower the forks, okay? So keep your load always at the same level, around 2-3 inches of the ground, and keep stable like this. So always drive at a walking pace. And when you stop, do it slowly, because if you do it quickly, the load might move.
Nice job.
So drive slowly and stop slowly. Fasten your seatbelt, do not jump from a forklift. When you are on a ramp, don't try to turn because you might flip the forklift. When you pass by blind corners or places without visibility, please sound the horn. Make other people know that you are there. Another important thing is in the night, when you drive a forklift in the night, you should have light enough to carry out your work in the night, to see where are you going, but also for other people to see where you are. One last message about forklifts. Keep people and machines well separated. If in your winery you can delimitate a place for forklifts, like a highway for forklifts, separate for people, that's the best. Work on confined spaces. You might be lead to work in confined spaces in a winery, like a tank or a pneumatic press, where you have to go inside to take off the pomace, to take off the grape skins, and to clean it up. Two common hazards when you work in a confined space, like a tank, is the poor quality of the air, because there's not enough oxygen and there is too much CO2, and also you are exposed to some chemical agents, okay? So very poor quality of the air, okay? The normal conditions, the air that we breathe, have around 21% of oxygen, and the quantity of CO2 is very, very small, smaller than 1% of all the air. But inside the tank, fermentation vat, you have very, very slow amounts of oxygen, but you have a lot of CO2. So even at the end of the fermentation, when the yeasts, they no longer process sugar, so they release less CO2, still the tank is full of deadly quantities of CO2. Before you go inside to take off the pomace and to clean the tank, you should make sure that the quality of air is okay. So many of the death of fatal accidents in wineries, they are due to CO2 intoxication. So how do we proceed to make sure that the tank is safe to go inside? You should measure the quality of air. So there are several devices in the market, okay? Some of them you use it on you, others they are fixed, and you check how much oxygen you have, and also, very important, how much CO2 you have. Because you might have a good amount of oxygen, okay, but because you have so much CO2 that you get intoxicated, okay? So one of the techniques, old school techniques, to see if there is enough oxygen or if it's okay, is the candle test, okay? So in the old times, people were going up, they were lighting, using a lighter, and if there was a flame, they were going inside. Well, let me tell you, that is the most stupid test ever existed, because you can die in the cube where there's enough oxygen for having a flame, okay? This is an inefficient detector. It doesn't work and you can lose your life. You should wear with you, or just test the quantity of oxygen and CO2. So to reduce the risk of intoxication, two things very important. First, ventilate, and second, monitorize. So when you go inside to drain and press and take all the pomace of the tank, you should follow a protocol, a procedure, okay? Starting by monitorizing the quality of air, writing down in the document, and you should be trained for doing this. Also, very important, never go to a confined space all alone. Somebody should be with you outside the tank, and you should have some devices that in case you fall or you just don't feel good, it will be easy to take you off the tank without going inside. So never be alone inside a confined space. So working with a ladder, you will use it in a winery all the time to reach a higher point in a tank, etc. Well, that's a dangerous always to fall from height because you are climbing and there are risks on that. So some advice when you use a ladder. First, when you install it, check there is no problem with the ladder, that everything is okay in terms of the structure. You can check if there is any broken rungs. And once you see that it's in a good shape, you should place it in a stable and firm surface, okay? You want to make sure that it's stable. Look, I put this ladder just in front of the tank, okay? So all the 4 points are there, but if it's quite stable, okay? But if I move some centimeters, it's not stable. So before I climb it, I make sure that it's in a stable position, okay? And then you can climb on it. You face the ladder when you climb, okay? You don't gonna climb like this unless you work in a circus. So you're gonna climb facing the ladder, okay? And something important, it's always keep 3 points of contact, okay? I have my 2 feet, my hand. Here I'm okay. I'm in a stable position. If I take my hands off, I lose a point of connection and it's much more difficult to get in a stable position, okay? So always 3 points. So let's talk about making a pump over or a punch down using a ladder. So I don't recommend at all to use a ladder for doing this kind of operations because of the following reason. So you're gonna climb to your ladder and there will be a moment that you're gonna use your 2 hands to hold the hose, because you might start it like this, but there's a moment that you involuntarily gonna touch. And if you lose your balance and you're gonna fall, the most probably is that you're gonna fall grabbing the hose. That's a human instinct when fall, grab something. So you don't gonna let your hose go and fall with your hands. That's very improbable, okay? Most probably, that's a human instinct, is to grab something. And when you follow grabbing something, what's gonna touch the floor is gonna be your head, okay? So there are much more safer ways to work the pomace, to go in the top of the tank. Well, as we're gonna see later, in our winery, we don't need to make pump overs or punch down using a ladder. We have a platform above the tanks that can help us to reach us. So be very careful when you do an operation that requires your both hands when you are standing in the ladder. We are in the top of the tanks, and as you can see, we don't need to climb and to sit on a ladder to make a pump over, because we can grab the hose from here, or it just can connect it here. So this platform allows us to work perfectly safe, okay? What we have here, it's a red fermentation tank with a big, it's not an open top, but almost like that. You have this big circle that allows you to work on the pomace with a pump over or with a punch down. I would like to call your attention for some risky situations that might happen when you make a punch down or even a pump over and you are too close of the mast in the open top tank or in a tank with a big door like this one. You always want to keep distance from the center of the tank, okay? When you grab your punch down device, you're gonna work with it far away from the entrance, and you don't gonna bend yourself in this position. Because imagine if something happened or it goes too fast, up, you go with it, okay? So very important to keep a safety distance. So when you want to make a punch down in the cuve, in the middle of the fermentation, where the pomace is dry and difficult to break. So you're going to need a lot of effort with a manual device. So what you might want to do to get the cap easy to work, more smoothly, you can humidify it a little bit by pumping over some juice. Okay, so you pump over, make a small pump over, the cap is going to become smooth, and then easy to work with a punch down device. Okay, so always far away and in the safe position. So ideally is to use a harness, okay, that you can hold on a solid surface. In many countries, it's compulsory to use a harness when you work in this kind of conditions. Okay, well, I think that's a very good idea to use this kind of the devices, because as safe it is, as better for everybody. Okay, so once we finish to make our pump over, our punching down, and if you don't want to put the lid like this kind on, if you want to liberate the CO2 and the heat, etc., if you want to leave it open, we should always use a protect device like this, a screen or something that will stop someone or something to fall. For those who are not sensible to safety questions, I feel sorry, because things are happening every year, fatal injuries, and this can save a life. During the fermentation, if you close your tank and there is no way for the CO2 to evacuate, you're going to be under pressure. The tank will be under pressure, okay? Imagine that you arrive in the morning to make your morning series of pump over or punch down, and realize that your tank is closed. Normally, we don't let the tank close at this phase of the fermentation. We might leave the lid just like this, okay? But we don't gonna lock it, because if you lock it, no CO2 is gonna escape. So imagine that in the morning you arrive and somebody left it closed. You better watch out, because there's an under pressure tank there, and if you try to open without releasing the gas slowly, you are in danger, because it might blow to your face. So before open the tank, make sure that you relieve the pressure, okay? And when you let the tank door and it's fermenting, and if there is no pressure van, don't close it, okay? Just let it like this. So a way to relieve the pressure in a tank that it was mistakenly closed is open it slowly, 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 and keep a good distance. Wet floors are one of the major causes of accidents in winery. We are always cleaning, always washing the material, the equipment, the vats, etc. There's a high risk of slipping and sliding and fall. For that, I have several recommendations. Wear well-fitting and non-slipping footwear. Walkways and the floor clear from tools, hoses, liquids. Be sure that you see where you are walking, especially when you are carrying some things with you. So if you see slippery floors, post a warning there, okay? So I was speaking about wet floor and the fact that in a winery is like a boat. We are always cleaning, so we get also wet. And very important is your feet. So you should not stay a lot of time with your wet feet, because you risk to get like a sore throat or catch a cold. So I strongly advise you to always have a pair of socks, okay? When you finish the duty, you change your socks. So keep your feet dry and will not get killed. Doing a harvest is a great experience. It will change your life. You don't want to screw up with an accident. Work safety depends on you, and we wish you a very, very good harvest.